I went to a philosophy event where the topic of discussion was consciousness, and so I wanted to speak a little about it because even at the end of 2 hours, we still didn't come to an agreement on what consciousness is or means to us. And I think it's important because we have a tendency to sort of use consciousness as a synonym for reality. And this is significant to me at the moment because I went through an ego death very recently, and it was very, 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 very violent. And I'm rebuilding. I said in a previous article that to understand the external, you look within. But when that sense of self and sense of understanding it comes crashing down, what do? I've just been trying to do the opposite. So to understand the self, I am looking outside. I've been looking more than I've been speaking and just watching the world. And also listening to other people and their thoughts. And it's been very enriching. And so at this event, I have some notes that I took, but again, I found it interesting that consciousness seems to involve a dialogue between the external and the internal. Some people sort of felt like consciousness involved the interpretation of external stimuli and then having the ability to then articulate and rationalize and understand those stimuli. And so it was common that they were tying consciousness to awareness, to knowing, to intentionality. And I struggled a lot because I do not necessarily think that consciousness is limited to the mind or to the self or to the living. I guess I'll explain a bit about that if I can. But someone else introduced this Yoruba concept of Ori, where she had said that with this concept, it is understood that we meaning humans, are all born with consciousness. I believe she did extend it to animals, but you're born with consciousness. And so I tied this concept to, I guess, Taoism, where a recurring theme, especially in Tao Te Ching, is this idea of returning to the root. And so I like this idea of consciousness being something you're born with. It's something inherent, and then we sort of deviate from it as we are socialized and as we learn more about the world, or at least the world is taught to us. And it feels like, rather than consciousness being something that is developed, for instance, I think I brought up the idea of, because consciousness being tied to the brain, I think I was just tying it to sort of like the different parts of the brain, and like, for instance, frontal, prefrontal, and that being something that is developed. Although I don't tie that to consciousness. I don't think that we become more conscious, more or less conscious as we age. I don't think it has anything to do with that. And again, I don't limit consciousness to the mind, to humans, to living. Because with Taoism, it's something that sort of, it's a force that permeates all things. And I think the same can be said for consciousness, because we're all sort of pure. And so everything that is external, everything that is outside of me, whether that be other people, animals, plants, rocks, and honestly things that are man-made too, because if you think of matter, you can't just like make something out of nothing. It's sort of just particles are changing form. And so I think that's all a part of consciousness. I think someone else brought up this idea of like hyper consciousness, and they tied it specifically to Buddhist monks, which I don't think I agree with. I do believe in a sort of higher consciousness, because it felt like a lot of the discussions, I was just struggling a lot because I felt like my understanding of consciousness was completely different from what everyone else was trying to argue. But I think we're just very self-centered, ego-driven. I even brought up more ego, super ego, id, things being like subconscious or unconscious even, but I don't think consciousness has to do with the mind. Because it sort of feels like it's beyond the mind. And when I say that people have a tendency to sort of center themselves and center the ego, I say that because when we brought up animals and plants and them having consciousness, we got into sort of, it felt like some people felt it was important to measure consciousness, like who has more consciousness, with, I guess, the sort of argument that humans do. And I don't know, I felt like that wasn't a very productive thought. I struggled with that idea because we have measurements for IQ, measurements for intelligence, so that being IQ, measurements for, I think there's even a measurement for empathy. There's all these sorts of measurements, but I don't think that they mean anything really. And so I don't think it's very productive to sort of measure consciousness. I don't think it's going to help us understand what consciousness truly is, what reality truly is. And so I also sort of tied all this with my meditation group session, which was yesterday. And so I guess I'll just reiterate that I see myself in others, in people across the world, in animals, in plants, in rocks, and in everything. Because they are a part of my existence and beyond my existence. Because I don't know how long my life will be, but that in comparison to reality, to life, to the universe, I don't think I don't center myself. I don't center my life, and that's not my frame of reference here. And so I think everything is sort of connected and all speaks to consciousness being a unifying force, the same way that Tao is a unifying force that permeates all things and connects all things. And again, it's a unification of the external and the internal. And so not only is the external a part of me, but I am a part of the external. And so I don't have an argument or a thesis to it all, but I think I just wanted to end off with I've been sort of keeping up with world events, and I was watching the news with my mom, and we were watching just videos about the earthquake in the Philippines. And so I asked her, I said, when entire cities are destroyed and there's no promise of safety or security, what incentive is there to rebuild? If you don't know, the Philippines is so prone to natural disasters, just based on its positioning. And so, what incentive is there to rebuild? Why would you put all this money, all this labor, all this time into building these structures, which, when we do build structures, but I think this is a very Western thing of me to think, but there's sort of not a permanence to it, but that's the sort of implication. And so she didn't have an answer to me. Like, oh, what incentive is there? She didn't have an answer. And I think that is very revealing. Because again, nothing is permanent, nothing is promised, and still you rebuild. Again, the same way my sense of identity completely crashed down, you rebuild. Yeah. I think I truly just want to end this with a sort of I want to set intentions, not just for people who are struggling due to the implications of natural disasters, but a lot of the disasters in the world right now are entirely a product of humanity. And so I just want to set intentions. And I think I always do, but properly, but let me just let there be peace and let there be freedom for all. That's all. Maybe I'll do this again. Who knows?